Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to GDI Consulting's OASIS Plus Small Business Webinar. We're going to run through some of the requirements of the scoring system, the optimization, and compliance. Just quick administrative notes. We are recording this webinar, and the link to the recording will be sent to you within 24 hours. For your Q&As, please feel free to use the chat feature. At the end of the session, we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. You can also download this presentation by clicking on the link in the File tab feature on the right-hand side of the panel of your window. So just an announcement, if your company needs a pre-qualification done for you, we do have a service that provides this. It's essentially a questionnaire that's going to be sent to you. You're going to complete it, and then one of our proposal managers will review and prepare a comprehensive report for you. Click on the Offer tab on the right-hand side of the screen to go to that link if you're interested. So the pre-qualification report, this is sort of what it would look like. You'll give us all of the information, the qualifying projects, etc. We will come up with our scoring for you, and then at that point you can make the determination on how you want to move forward, whether it's teaming up with other companies, etc. This is us. I'm not going to dwell too much on this. We do have a lot of information to give it to you, but we've been around for over 10 years supporting large, small business companies, very strong win rates, and I'll just come over here and show you. Some of the customers or some of the projects we provide are all for the Department of Defense, the federal civilian agencies, as shown on the slides. And we are very, very strong and very experienced on doing GWACs that specifically requires the self-scoring. As you can see, some of our successes right here on your screen. Just on the OASIS Small Business, we've had 41 wins, 12 on the unrestricted. Good scores on the Astro, high win rates on Astro, also on HCATS, Alliant. Our average win rate we boast is 96% on these GWACs that require self-scoring. And as mentioned, our clients range from small companies, where we've also helped partner with other companies. We support some of the largest defense contractors. We're experts in maximizing your score and ensuring compliance. Quick outline of what we're going to cover. A short intro to the self-scoring systems, something that, a little info on the OASIS Plus. 101, the scoring system, score optimization, ensuring compliance, and then we'll do Q&As. The most important thing once you're starting out is the self-scoring systems. You would initially start out by assessing yourself based on the RFP requirements. You can use the scoring sheet that the RFP has provided at the end in section M, kind of use that spreadsheet to complete your own scoring, or you can also do it on Symphony. If you've already registered, you can go in and use that system. You want to substantiate your claims in the proposal phase by providing all of the needed documents in the proper way. They do have to be highlighted, they have to be organized, and you've got to substantiate everything from the NAICS code, the statement of work, the period of performance, values, etc. There is really no proposal writing involved. It's just a matter of gathering all of the documents. The only writing that would really be involved is like your professional compensation plans, if you don't already have one, on overtime compensated plans and things like that. The government, so on this proposal, the compliance is key. The government, once they receive your proposals, they're going to review it for compliance, and they will remove all non-compliant ones. And even something as small as a naming convention or forgetting to put a POC name on an ISO certificate, etc., will deem you non-compliant. You want to make sure all your documents, your substantiations are together and there highlighted. So awards are usually made to the companies that are over the minimum threshold. So we typically say it should be at least 5 points or more over. Again, we are talking about OASIS Plus 101. GSA, this is a large GWAC. A draft RFP was issued on November 15th with some comments due back to the government before the end of the year on December 31st. They expect to have the contract released, the actual RFP released anywhere from January to February, with an award possible date of September 2023. And they have the tracks are for total small businesses, the 8A's Hub Zone, service disabled, veteran-owned, woman-owned small business, and of course they have an unrestricted pool. The domains are going to be management advisory, technical and engineering, research and development, intelligence, enterprise solutions, environmental, facilities, and logistics. You can choose to go after one domain or go after multiple domains. Some of the integrated functional areas, services are financial, human capital, marketing and public relations, social services, business administration, IT services, security protection, transportation, and medical. Just a little bit on the scoring system right now. Ab, did you want to take over from here, or would you like me to continue? Are you there?
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Muge. Hello, everyone. My name is Abmand, and thank you for participating in this webinar. As Muge said, we have a lot to cover today, so we are going to go a little bit fast. If it's too fast for you, remember that you can always download the presentation slides and then review it in more detail. Because we wanted to save some time at the end for Q&A. So we'll start with the scoring system. The maximum score for all the domains is 50. And for small businesses, the minimum threshold is 36. They have not published yet their requirements for the enterprise solutions domain, but for the other 7, it's 36. And you just have to make sure that you are above that and you are compliant, and then you get the contract. So it's not a competitive RFP in that they're going to compare you with the others' score. You just have to be above that 36. The key players will go into detail on that, but essentially you have to have 5 what they call QPs or qualifying projects. And depending on the domains, between 34 to 45 points or 68 to 90% of the score depends on those 5 contracts, on those 5 projects. So selecting those is really key and the most important factor, and I'm going to show you why here. There are essentially 3 parts to the scoring. Those 5 qualifying projects, which is shown in blue, federal experience, and then systems and certifications. You can see that the key player is the qualifying projects or the QPs. So one of the conclusions is that it's really not important if your past experience has been mostly with the commercial side, for example. Or your federal experience is low, because as you can see, the key player in terms of getting the score is the QPs, the qualifying projects. Also, the same reasoning stands for the systems and certifications. You might be weak in there, but if you can get your score high in the qualifying projects, again, you can reach that minimum threshold. So the key taking from this slide is that you should focus on getting the best 5 qualifying projects to get the maximum score. Now, let's explain what the factors that actually make up those QP scoring are. There are essentially 6 of them, and we are going to go into details on those: relevance, scale, integrated experience, specialized functional experience, management and staffing, and past performance. And I'll go into these one by one. Okay, so if you look at how these play, so we are right now talking only about that 68 to 90% of the score, which is given by the QPs, the qualifying projects. If you compare the different parts, different factors that are involved in the score for the QPs, you can see that the main one is relevance. If you look at all these different domains, except for Intel, which gives you 10 points, the rest of them give you 20 points. So nearly half in most cases of the score is based on relevance. And we're going to go into relevance later on. But this gives you an idea of how important different factors are. The factors, as I said, were relevance, scale, which means the value of the contract, plus how many FTEs were involved, integrated experience, specialized functional experience, management and staffing, and past performance. You can see that past performance plays a very small part in this, unlike other projects, other self-scoring projects in previously. So let's delve into this in more detail. Let's look at relevance. So what is relevance? First of all, if you look at this table at the top, you can see that for each of the domains, the value of relevance, or the score you can get, the maximum score for the 5 is 20. For the 5 QPs is 20, except for Intel, which you get 10. So when it's 20 for 5, it means that for each project, you get 4 points. If it's relevant, you get 4 points. 5 times 4 is 20, except for Intel, which you get 2 points for each project. Now, what are the requirements? First of all, these contracts can be standalone. They can be task orders under a multiple award IDIQ, single award IDIQ, BPA, FSS, or BOA. And you can also use one combined task orders. So you might have a contract under a single award that you had 3 or 4 task orders under, but the task orders were small, but you can combine them to get a larger value. Now, these contracts can be federal prime, in that you were priming those contracts from the federal government. You could have been a subcontractor to a federal contract, or it could be a commercial project. So you can use all of those. Now, these are the requirements. The contracts must have an annual value as spelled out above. So those values that you can see, 500,000 K, or in case of R&D, 1 million, or in terms of facility and environmental, 250,000, those are annual. And the way you calculate the annual value is in 2 ways. First of all, if the project is ongoing, the annual value would be the total value of the contract, even though it hasn't been paid to you. Say it's a 5-year contract and you've gotten you finished the first year, and in 5 years you're supposed to get, say, $20 million. So you divide $20 million by the total contract value, duration. Again, even though you've done only 1 year, but if the contract is a 5-year contract, so you divide $20 million by 5 and come up with a number. So that's the annual value. So for ongoing projects, your criteria or your base is what the contract says. If the contract says it's a $10 million project for 5 years, that's the value. For completed projects, the value is the value of the contract that you put in the calculation is what you actually receive. So as the government calls it, obligated. So what you were paid, that's the actual value. It might be less or it might be more than the contractual value of the contract. And then you divide that by the real duration of the contract. So if it was contractually $20 million in 5 years, but actually it was only $10 million in 3 years, so you use that. If it's completed, you use that $10 million in 3 years. There's also another requirement in that if it's an ongoing project, it needs to have at least 6 months of performance. So you can't use a project that you got, a contract you got 2 months ago. it needs to have at least 6 months of performance, unless it's completed. If it's completed, it's fine. It could have been a project for only 2 months, 3 months. That's fine. But the other thing about completed project is that it needs to have been completed within the last 5 years. So what is the ending date? The ending date would be the date proposals are due, which we don't know when. But when the final RFP comes out and they provide a due date for the proposals, then you have to calculate 5 years from that, and that would be the date you're allowed to use contracts for, in terms of their completion. And then last thing is that these contracts cannot have a negative past performance. So these QPs must have and we are talking about average, because as you know, when they provide a past performance report, they grade you on different issues, from small business to scheduling to performance and other things. What we are talking about here is the average of all those. So the average must be over satisfactory. It can't be satisfactory. This is the key point. It cannot be satisfactory, or in terms of numbers, they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Satisfactory is 3. It cannot be 3. It must be above 3. So that is the key point that you have to remember. So even if it's 3.1, the average is 3.1, it's good to go. But 3 by itself is not acceptable. So that's relevance in terms of what are the requirements for those QPs. Now, the other factor involved is scale. That means how big the project was. Now, the scale of the project is reviewed in two factors, two sub-factors. One, the value, and the other is how many FTEs you use. So if you look at these, for example, let's take a look at for example, T&E. Under T&E, you get 6 points. Now, first number for each QP that you get is if it's over $1 million. This is annual, remember? Or if you use more than 5 FTEs in the project. If that's the case, you get 1 point. If it were over $4 million, or you use more than 20 FTEs, you get a second point. So for each QP, you can get maximum 2 points. One, if it was over 1 million, or you used over 5 FTEs. Or in addition to that 1 point, you get another point if it's over $4 million or 20 FTEs were used. Now, this varies if you look at the different domains. Some of them are higher. For example, under R&D, they don't look for FTEs. It just says you get 1 point if it's over $2 million, and you get another point if it's over $7.5 million. So this is how this is calculated. Now, one point that you should remember is that assume that you have 5 contracts. Each of those are over $4 million. You wouldn't get 10 points. The maximums are written above on that first row of points. So even if you can get 10 points, the maximum you can get is 6 under most of these. So that's one of the factors that you should remember. Now, another thing that you should also remember, this is for businesses that don't necessarily have 5 relevant, as we discussed in the previous slide. Businesses that don't have 5 relevant projects, and that as relevant, I meant over, for example, $500,000 in most cases, done in the past 5 years, 5 years, and also with past performance over satisfactory. That's called relevant. You can use another project. You can use a QP that is not relevant, but you don't get the relevance score, but you might get the scale score. So you have a contract that is very large, $20 million, but for some reason the past performance was not good. You can still use it, get the scale factor for it. You just don't get the score for relevance. I hope this is not confusing. I can explain this later on. Now moving forward, integrated experience. Okay, so you get, you can see that most of these domains get 4 points for that. This works on two sub-factors. One, number of labor categories that you use in that project, and also functional areas. Now, functional areas are explained in the RFP, so we are not going to go into details and explaining each of those because they're different for each of these domains. But if you use 3 or more, for example, functional areas, and in some cases like facility 4 or more or environmental 5 or more, you get 1 score. This is an or. So if you got a labor category or a functional area, either of those, you get the score. Now, the thing is that, again, here, you might run into the fact that in terms of the number of projects that you have, the QPs, that's the ceiling, so you can't go over the 4 score. Also, again, the same explanation I had. If you don't have a relevant QP, you can still use a non-relevant QP here, get the score for it. So you might have a contract that will give you the 4 points. I mean, a number of contracts that can help you get these points, but they're not relevant, so they don't get the score under relevance. That's allowed. Okay, moving forward, specialized functional experience. Now, for the facility, environmental, and logistics domains, they will also give you extra score if you can show, for example, under facility, that each QP receives 1 credit if it covers 3 or more of the below. And you can read it. I'm not going to go through it, but just for the facility, for example, if building management services, electrical maintenance, HVAC maintenance, janitorial, landscaping and ground maintenance, plumbing and pipe fitting, if 3 of those were used in one of the contracts, you get 1 credit for it. And the same stands for environmental and logistics. So as you can see, you can get 5, 6, and 4, depending on the domain, extra points for these specialized functional experience. Moving forward, going to management and staffing. Okay, you can see that most of these domains give you 5 points for that, except for Intel. I'm going to explain that, and facility gives you just 2. So you can use actually 5 QPs and then get 1 score from each QP based on the requirements. Now, the requirements are 3 of them. First, it's any of the 3: search capability, 3 or more first-tier subs, or 5 or more personnel with clearances. So any of these, if you used in that project, in that QP project, if you had a search requirement and you actually did it, and they have explained what it means. It means 10% level of effort increase under a 45 days lead time. So that's considered what surge is. If you use 3 or more first-tier subs, that's allowable. And here, remember that first-tier subs also includes independent contractor contracts. So it might be just 1 person, but if you had an independent contractor agreement with them, that's considered a first-tier sub. 5 or more personnel with clearances. So if you had, for example, 5 or more personnel in that project with security or top security clearances, that counts too. Now, if you have any one of these 3, you get 1 point for that project. So again, the same explanation I did for the previous one. You can use non-relevant QPs to get scoring here. Now that Intel one, the Intel domain has an extra thing that means like this. In addition to the points that you get here, which are 5, which also stands for Intel, so 1 point for each QP if it has search capability, 3 or more first-tier subs, and 5 or more personnel with clearances. So that's 5 points. You get 15 more points if for each of the QPs you had 5 or more personnel with clearances. So essentially, if just for the Intel domain, if your QP did have 5 or more personnel with clearances, you get 3 points for that. So 3 times 5 is 15, plus the 5 that goes along with like the other domains, you get 20. So Intel gets 20 points for management and staffing. Moving forward, okay, we go to management and staffing type of work. This is specific to facilities domain. They are going to give you 1 credit for each QP if it covers either of these 3 types: urgent work request response, emergency work request response, or emergency call after hours. And they have explained what that is. So for those companies that are going for facilities, this is another area that you can get scores for. Then we come to past performance. You get 3 points, and it's maximum 3 points for all domains, the same. But it works like this. You receive 1 credit for 3 or more relevant QPs with an overall positive past performance. When I say overall positive, it means the average of the different factors inside a past performance rating report, but it has to be above 3. So you can't use one which is all satisfactory. That's not acceptable, because that would give you 3. You need to have above 3. So you get 1 credit if you have 3 of the QPs having that kind of a past performance rating. You get 2 credits if 4 of your QPs are above average, above past 3, and then you get 3 credits if 5 of them are above. So that's something to consider. And then remember, you don't receive credit for QPs with overall satisfactory rating, neutral, or non-relevant, that sort of thing. You can still use those QPs to claim other QP-based credit, but you can't use them here. And then I've explained that this is the average of all factors in CPAR. So in your CPAR, you might even have one of the items as unacceptable. But if the others are very good, for example, and the average comes out over 3, that project can be used. Okay, so that was what I explained up to this point was the QP scoring system, which, just to reiterate, covered between 68% to 90% of all the scoring of this contract. Now, I'm going to go into the other ones, which are less important, but just to give you an idea of what they are. There are 2 other areas. One is the federal experience area, and the other one was systems and certifications. If we look at the factors that involve in federal experience, we'll see that they cover breadth, MA IDIQ, that is if you have any multiple award IDIQ contracts, federal agencies, how many federal agencies you have worked with, if some of your contracts are cost reimbursement, and if some of your contracts were involved in advanced R&D, research and development. Now remember, this section is only for federal contracts. And when I say federal contracts, 2 points you should remember. 1, you can't use any commercial contracts here. And 2, and this is important, 2, you need to be prime on these contracts. So if you had subcontracts from federal contractors, you cannot use them here. Okay, so this area is for federal prime contracts. Moving forward, let's see what breadth was. As you can see, you get 2 points for some of these domains. Some don't have any, and logistics has 1. Now, for this one, you can use all 5, but since you get only 2 points, it doesn't need to have that. But you can use up to 5 other contracts. So remember this, for federal experience, you don't have to use those QPs. You can use, you have 5 QPs, for example, but for federal experience, you want to bring in other contracts. That's acceptable. You can actually bring in 5 more contracts to get the score. Now, these contracts have to have 3 requirements. 1, prime federal service contracts. 2, with annual value over 250,000, mostly half of what the QPs were. So QPs were mostly $500,000. Here is 250,000. So you don't have to have $500,000 annual values. So you can use actually smaller contracts. And then they need to be, again, like QPs, ongoing for 6 months or completed within the last 5 years. So these are the requirements for these contracts that you're going to use. You receive 1 credit if you can provide a contract that covers 3 or more NAICS codes or PSCs under the domain you're going for. So, and then remember, we're talking about federal contracts, so forget about commercial contracts. So if you get 1 credit, if you can show that you had 3 contracts that had the proper NAICS code or the PSC code that goes under the domain. And if you go to section C of the RFP or the qualification matrix, the list of the NAICS and PSCs for each domain is listed. You receive 2 points under this criteria if you provide projects spanning 5 or more NAICS codes. So 1 credit or 1 point if you have 3 contracts with the proper NAICS codes, and 2 credits if you have 5 contracts that cover the proper NAICS and PSC codes. And one last note, the NAICS code or the PSC must represent the principal purpose, and only 1 may be claimed per project. In other words, you can't use, for example, a pure IT project that had a small amount of engineering work in it. So the NAICS code must be the main NAICS of that contract under the domain that you're going for. Moving forward, we go to multiple award IDIQ participation. So they're going to give you 4 points in most cases, for environmental 3 points and logistics 2 points. If you can prove that you had contracts that were task orders under, that had at least 2 task orders, under multiple award IDIQ contracts. They want to make sure, remember, it can't be a single award IDIQ, it must be a multiple award IDIQ. Task orders are only considered competitive if 2 or more business submitted a proposal. The used projects must be, again, prime federal service contracts based on TOs on an MA IDIQ. The value must be $250,000, or that's annual, and then again 6 months performance or completed within the last 5 years. Note that right now the wording of the RFP doesn't prohibit you from using multiple TOs under the same MA IDIQ. So they might come and change this, but if you have a multiple award IDIQ with 5 or 4 TOs, each of them are over 250,000, you probably, at least with the writing of the RFP right now, with the wording, you can get all the scores. We have to wait and see what the final RFP comes out with in this regard. For environmental domain, you get 3 contracts, you can show 3 TOs and get the score. And for logistics, if you use 2 TOs, show TOs that were under MA IDIQ, you get the maximum 2 points. Moving forward, federal agencies. Okay, again, here, remember, we're talking about only federal contracts and only federal contracts that you were prime on. Now, if you show that you did projects for 3 different federal agencies, you get a point. Except for Intel, the other domains all give you a point. Now, these contracts must be 1, prime federal service contracts, 2, annual value of $250,000, and 3, as usual, 6 months performance or completed within the past 5 years. Now, when we talk about a federal agency, it means the funding agency, not the ordering agency. Sometimes they're different. You know, one agency funds, the other agency uses or is the owner. The funding agency is the key player here, and you can get that from the FPDS report from the government website. Okay, and one last note, sometimes for multiple award IDIQs, they have a minimum guarantee under the IDIQ. That cannot be considered a contract here. The project must have been funded. So in effect, you need to have received a TO or some sort of a performance must have been started. Okay, moving forward. Additional for R&D. So 2 other items under federal experience exist, but this is only for the R&D domain. One is cost reimbursement. You get 2 points if you can show that, if you can show 2 contracts that were cost reimbursement. Now remember, these are different from the QP. So the 5 contracts that you use for QP are separate. Here you can use 2 other contracts. It might be that you use the same contracts as in the QPs, qualifying projects, but you can use others, and you get 1 credit for each. Now, but the same requirement stands in that they need to be prime federal service contracts over $250,000 annually, 6 months, and performance or completed within the last 5 years. Now, in addition to that, there is the advanced R&D. You get 1 point for that, for each contract that you can show covered advanced R&D. And advanced R&D, they have explained what it is. It means R&D effort performed through the SBIR or STTR programs under phase 2 or phase 3, or applied research and experimental exploratory advanced development as demonstrated by the PSC. And the PSC, to help you, they've said that the PSC should start with an A at the first position and numbers 2 or number 3 in the 4th position. If that is the case, you can use that. Or projects with an assessed technology readiness level, TRL, of 3 or higher. If you have any of these 3, then you can get 1 point per contract for advanced R&D. Okay, moving forward, and I'm behind, so I'm going to skip some of things. Okay, just this, we are not going to go into comparing each of the sections that make up systems clearances and certifications. They cover accounting system, rates and purchasing, different types of clearances, and CMMI and ISO. This gives you an idea of what each domain will cover, but we'll not go into detail there. So here I stop, and Muge, please continue from here on.
Of course. So thank you, Ab, for that detailed explanation. So again, score optimization. Definitely read the RFP carefully, Section L requirements, including Section M, the NAICS code requirements, etc. And look at the Q&As as they come out. That'll really provide a lot of information. Do not use past OASIS RFPs or any past Q&As, because that'll just confuse you even more. The key here is concentrating on maximizing your score on the 5 QPs. The higher your score, the better the chances are of you to get in. Also maximize the using of your commercial projects as your QPs. If you have multiple contracts that we just went through, remember that's great, and it's great for the scoring system. So go on to the self-scoring matrix and kind of put it and play around with those numbers. Do make you full use of partnering. It's going to boost your score wherever you feel like you don't have enough qualifying projects and you may want to bring in teaming partners. Do that. And of course, outsource your proposal preparation and review so that professional eyes can get on it to make sure that you have carefully scored yourself. Maybe you accidentally shortchange yourself. Maybe you can get a higher score. Definitely consider outsourcing this effort. I'm not going to go through this because Ab just did a great discussion on the annual revenues. As he said, qualifying projects, 500,000 annual. So if you've got a contract, that's 984,000, but it was 20, 21, 22, 3 years. You divide it by the period of performance, and your annual revenue comes to 492. No, that's not going to qualify because it's under 500. Compliance, again, what can go wrong? You misunderstand the requirements. You did not score yourself carefully. The QP relevant annual value calculations, past performance ratings, you make sure for each domain you've got the relevant content and you meet the minimum value requirements. Incomplete substantiation, you want to make sure you have carefully highlighted everything and you've got all the right documents to substantiate, and the explanation on which qualify for verification is provided in the requirements of the contract in Section L. If you don't have proper signatures, if your NAICS codes or PSC codes are off, it's not going to be considered, you're not going to get the points. Again, not showing relevance. And if you're not submitting it through Symphony carefully. Now, Symphony has done a great job in updating the system. They also have tutorials, so you may want to take advantage on how to properly upload and where to get the scores calculations properly. So we've gone through this, read the RFP, make sure you go through the Q&As a few times to make sure you completely understand the compliance and the questions and answers. Do 2 rounds of compliance checks for sure. Pay attention to your detail. If you want to make sure to get 3 to 5 points above the minimum threshold, which is 36 for small businesses, and use a third party to review your scoring. And how can we help? Obviously, the services we provide you a consultation. We can do a pre-qualifications assessment. We can do the full proposal development with a dedicated proposal team for you. And we do, support you with just audits and review, and maybe not provide your proposal response or help you with it, but you just want us to do a red team, gold team, we'd be happy to do that as well. And that would also include the 2 rounds of compliance check, making sure the score is optimized, the score is correct, and also helping you with the upload to Symphony. To contact us, these are also on the slides. You can contact Ab Van for technical, and also Merlon Freedy is our director of sales. He would be happy to help you schedule meetings where we can go through your company's requirements and how we can support you on it. With that, I think we're good, Ab, right? We can open up for Q&As. I'm just going to run through some of the questions we did receive. So question that says, when creating a team for the proposal, is there a different weight assigned when the qualifying projects are for members of the team versus prime companies submitting a proposal? No, they're all considered qualifying projects. The only time where you don't get a score from the teaming partner, if it's sort of the CTA2 prime sub, are for the systems and certifications. But for qualifying projects, your team's points count equally as the primes, as yours. Are 5 QPs required even for a single domain? Applicants, i.e. facilities, can we succeed with only 2? Remember, this is about scoring. So the more projects you have, the more points you get. This is when, if you don't have 5 qualifying projects, you have 2, consider bringing on a teaming partner. How many years can we go back for a QP? 5 years up from the proposal due date, which we don't know what that is. And remember, you need to have minimum 6 months performance on the contract. Do the contracts have...
Muge, I just wanted to add to that, is
Sure.
that when we go back, that's the completion date. So you might have gotten a contract 10 years ago, but if it was completed within the last 5 years, that's good to go.
Exactly. I think that answers the next question. Do the contracts have to be completed, or can you include active contracts? If you can include active, will the annual value be based on how much has been obligated or just the contract value? So if it's an active contract and, it's let's say a $3 million contract, it's a 5-year contract, and Ab, you can jump in anytime. Basically, you divide that by the period of performance, your total value, to use as an annual value.
Exactly. So you don't go for the ongoing ones, for the active ones. You don't go for the obligated. You go by the contract. If the contract says it's a 5-year contract, you use the 5 years in terms of duration. And if the contract says it's $10 million, even though you haven't received $1 million more, you still use that 10 million. You divide that 10 million by, say, 5 years, and that's the annual value.
Thank you. The next question, will there be different weight for federal versus commercial contracts that's used for QP? So for the QP, the 5 relevant QPs, no. It's the same point structure. The only time where you do not get points is on the breadth of experience, the federal breadth of experience, because those have to be federal contracts. Commercial contracts don't count for that. How do purchase orders relate to a contract? If we have a contract with a prime and there are multiple purchase orders, is each purchase order a contract, or can we aggregate the purchase orders into a single contract? Some of our projects consist of a fixed FFP material purchase and T&M labor purchase. Those are on separate purchase orders from the prime. So each purchase order, we're going to assume this is a federal contract and it's a task order. So that, as long as the dollar value matches, those will be considered individual contracts, qualifying projects.
And I'm sure that this is going to be one of the questions asked from GSA. So they're going to probably cover that in the later RFPs as well.
Yeah, we expect a lot of questions to be definitely asked by contractors to GSA for them to answer on that. How do NAICS codes come into play? So each of you, as you can see, each of the domains are assigned a NAICS code by the government. So first you have to make sure your SAM has that registration, and 2, your contracts are awarded under that NAICS code. If they are not, and if they are closely aligned to the NAICS code, by 1 number, 2 numbers, whatever, it's the same. Instead of using the FPDS verification code, you will use the JP3 documentation provided, the draft one that's in the system right now provided by GSA, and have your customers sign that document to verify that this project is this NAICS code.
Okay, let me add to that. First of all, there is a document, an Excel sheet in the RFP documents. It's called OASIS Plus Domain NAICS Codes and PSCs 9, 15, 20, 22. So that document, that Excel sheet lists the NAICS and PSC codes for each domain, because some domains have multiple NAICS and PSCs that are accepted. So that's one thing you can refer to. And the second thing that Muge also explained is very important. Sometimes you have contracts that do have the NAICS code and PSC, but the NAICS code is not really correct. It happens a lot. And you can discuss this with the contracting officer. And if they fill out those forms that Muge explained, you can actually have a change of NAICS just for this. They're not going to change the database on FPDS or anything like that. But when they sign that form and you include that in your proposal, that's enough substantiation to show that the correct NAICS code, whatever it is is, substantiated. So that's one of the things you should consider if you think that the content of one of your contracts is in line, for example, with M&A, but the NAICS code is not covered under the M&A domain, as an example. You can still use that form that we mentioned and get a signature from the contracting officer and use that as substantiation that this contract was, in fact, relevant to M&A. Over.
Thank you, Ab. If submitting based on a QP of totaling over the annual value, does the subcontract have to be worth this annual value? If I understand the question correctly, it's not a prime contract that you're considering as a QP, but it's a subcontract. A subcontract is also considered a QP. You're just not going to get the prime federal experience for it. However, it is considered a standalone contract, but it does have to be, it's subject to the same annual dollar values.
In other words, for example, if the main contract is a $10 million contract for 1 year, just to make it simple, but your work was only $200,000 on that can't be used. Your subcontract must be over $500,000, for example, annually to be able to use it as QP. Your subcontract, not what the actual prime contract was.
Exactly, and we need that subcontract, the award documents, the Schedule B, clean structure, and everything provided to substantiate to the government. Can project alternative NAICS codes be requested? I think we just explained it. The NAICS code is what it is in the RFP, but if somehow the project is you think is incorrectly designated, that NAICS code is incorrectly designated by the contracting officer, then we do not have to use the FPDS report as verification. This is when you take the JP3 documentation completed with the NAICS code that matches the domain and send it in and have it signed by your contracting officer or the Corps.
And that is why one of the reasons we say you should start very early and don't lose time, because chasing contracting officers and making sure that they sign these forms might take a long time.
The next question is, as of right now, we are looking to expand to other domains. However, with the new auto-relevant NAICS PSCs, how can we utilize non-relevant NAICS PSCs outside of utilizing CLINs, which might not illustrate relevancy? So you have to use the NAICS. So the relevant projects, I think what maybe caused the confusion, Apps mentioned that you can use non-relevant projects to get the other points. But if we're trying to use that domain and we need to match that NAICS code, it has to match. You cannot use you cannot use a relevant project with an incorrect NAICS code, basically, to get the points. The NAICS codes have to match. I hope I've understood and answered that question properly. I know there's an OASIS 8A, so will an 8A firm responding to this be weighted more favorably? It's small business. Everybody gets the same scoring. Do you subs need to...
Excuse me, one point. Yes. They're going to award separate contracts for 8As, hub zones, and that sort of thing. So if you participate as an 8A, you will get, you can actually participate, and I recommend to all companies to participate in 2 lines at least. So if you're an 8A, participate in the 8A track and also participate in the small business track. This way, when they put out the task orders and the task order is only for 8As, you get it, and the task order is for small businesses only, you get it. So that's something to consider. Okay.
Absolutely. Do the subs need to be small? Yes. As if you're prime, small business prime, your subcontractors have to be small businesses.
And then if you are going for specific tracks like 8A or hub zone, then your subs must be also the same. So you can't you can't go after the 8A, for example, track and use projects from a sub that is just a small business or is not 8A. So remember that for 8A and hub zone and SDVOSB and WOSB, all of these, if you're going to use subs, those subs must also be in the same track as you.
Yes, and also meeting the same annual revenue, the NAICS code small business certificate. But just one point I want to make here is that if you have a collection of large business subcontractors, there is no restriction of a small business company to also place a bid under the unrestricted with your large business subcontractors.
Exactly.
Okay, so are past performance questionnaires used in lieu of CPARs? Yes, there is and I'm sorry, I forgot the number. It's either a JP7 or something. There is a past performance questionnaire to be completed by the government, and you need to receive it back so you can upload it onto the portal when the time comes. As I've stated, start now. It's the best time before the RFP is released. Once you've identified those qualifying QP projects, go ahead and submit your questionnaire so you can get it back in time. With the holidays and everything, they can be slow.
One catch, sorry.
Yes.
If you don't like what you got on your CPARS report, you can't go and get, a form filled out by the contacting officer. So the requirement is that you can use those forms only if a CPAR report does not exist. If a CPAR report exists, you can't use those forms.
Thank you. What documentation must be submitted to support contract values? It's going to be your signed contract award page, FPDS reports, your CLIN schedule, and invoices can also be submitted, depending on the domain. Are you submitting for a single labor category, or do you have to submit for all? So there is no pricing on this submission. It's only the administrative documents, the qualifying project documents. So you will not need to select or price a labor category for this contract. When teaming to boost the past performance of QP, does it help when the teaming partners in different domains, NAICS categories? So for example, a training and IT firm teaming. Everybody has to be, especially qualifying projects, everybody needs to be within the same domain, small business, and have to have the NAICS categories. The projects they're putting forward to boost your past performance has to be the same NAICS codes. Do we verify NAICS PXC codes if issued a subcontract, which is 1 million? Yes. So that's when the JP3 forms come into play. Those will get completed by your prime contracting officer. Anybody who has a subcontract, and there is really maybe not a NAICS code assigned, but it's aligned with what this is, then you fill out that JP form and you send it to the prime contractor, subcontract officer, whatever, to sign that for you, which gets uploaded. And we have about a minute, so let's see. If you participate in a hub zone, do all of your partners have to be hub zone 2? No. Do we expect any changes to the JP3 past performance sheet? Not necessarily, but you know what? In the past, and we've had a lot of these questions. In the past, if they do make changes, the government has always said you can either use the latest one or the ones that have already been completed. If they make changes, it's very minimal. And then I'm going to take the last question. The logistics domain currently only has 2 PSCs codes and no NAICS codes listed as auto relevant. Are you expecting that to change? How do we provide QP relevancy with just 2 PSE codes? Actually, it's 561210 is, oh, no, I'm sorry. For the logistics, it's 541614 is the NAICS code designated. And we're done at. It's 4 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Again, you can download the slides, and we can also email you this recording within 24 hours.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And we'll be, I know that there are a lot of other questions that we didn't have time. We'll go over everything and expect to receive emails from us with all the questions and our answers next week, so that we will remember you and answer all the questions. Don't worry about that. Or if you want, as Müge mentioned, you can request a call with Marone and coordinate that, and we can discuss it further. Thank you very much for your participation, and see you in our future webinars. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.